Here we are on the original grounds of Madison College, or the National Agricultural and Normal Institute as they called it in 1904. This is the very place that Ellen White saw in vision, and that she encouraged Percy Magan and Edward Sutherland that this was the property that they needed to purchase for their school. In 1939 we read this glowing report of one of the papers of the day as they wrote about Madison College. 8 miles north of Tennessee is a 350 enrollment college that violates all the known rules of how a college ought to behave. It will board and hire educated youngsters without either tuition money or promissory notes. In fact, the more penniless he is, the better it likes him. It operates without any endowment and only an occasional gift. Starting as a ramshackle farm building with only 11 students, it has pulled itself into a $1.5 million institution by its own bootstraps and doesn't owe a dime to anyone. What a remarkable account of this college. As it said in the article there, it broke all the known rules of how a college ought to behave. As Magan and Sutherland sought to put into place the principles of true education as they were given them by Sister White, Madison's school became a spectacle to men and angels. Here we are on the Cumberland River at Neely's Bend. It was this very spot where the steamboat, the Morning Star, broke down one morning in early June 1904. This is where Sister White, her 2 sons, and Edward Sutherland began on a journey up the Cumberland River in search of a property to establish a school. Edward Sutherland decided, as he was encouraged by Sister White, to go and look at the Ferguson-Nelson farm. It was a hard thing for Sutherland to go and look at the Ferguson-Nelson farm because it was so unattractive. It was a worn-out pig farm. Sutherland and Magan thought this property was too big. They thought it was too run down. It was too rocky, it was too barren, it was too unfertile. And from all human reasonings and human logic, it looked like the last place on earth where you'd go to establish the kind of school that they were wanting to establish. And this is where the faith of Sutherland and Magan were tested. Were they going to follow the counsels and instructions given through Sister White? Were they going to follow what seemed the most reasonable and logical thing to them, which was to ignore the Ferguson-Nelson farm and pursue and find a property that was more suitable to them? Well, praise God, they chose to step out in faith, believing what God had instructed them through Sister White. And so began the process of purchasing the property and beginning what became known as the Madison School. And I really just want to give you an idea of how successful the Madison School was. As early as 1908, Ellen White wrote and said if Madison was properly expanded and the plan of true education was carried out at Madison, that we as a people would become a spectacle to the world, to angels, and to man. And all of a sudden, in the late 1920s and 1930s, into the 40s, the spotlight of public acclaim broke out on Madison School. And in 1938, the Reader's Digest ran an article that was widely circulated in its papers entitled Self-Supporting College. And I want to read a little bit from that article to give you an idea of just how successful Madison College was and how it indeed did become a spectacle to the world, to angels, and to men. So here in this article we read the following. In 1904, the National Agricultural Normal Institute at Madison, Tennessee consisted of 11 students in some dilapidated farm buildings on 400 acres of worn land, purchased with the last cent of its founders, Dr. E.A. Sutherland, and 4 other teachers. In addition, however, it had one invaluable asset, Dr. Sutherland's idea that a college education should be made available to any boy or girl willing to work for it. This idea has grown a unique institution which practically without endowment has put $520,000 from its own earnings into buildings, grounds and equipment. It now has 300 odd students from 36 states and 9 foreign countries. Madison's curriculum includes 27 campus industries run by the students to support the college and themselves. Every student is required to work for at least half and preferably all of its academic expenses. He can enter Madison, as 2/3 of the students do, with no more than the required deposit fee of $35, complete a 4-year standardized college course for a Bachelor of Science degree, and graduate with the deposit intact. He will receive no outside financial aid in all that time, and he will leave college equipped to do not one job, but several. Multiple insurance against the caprices of fortune. Madison was an incredible place, a place where students from all over the world came to get real higher education, the highest education, to receive training not only for usefulness in this life, but for the life to come. Students would go out from Madison with the ability to give Bible studies, to do evangelism, to do missionary work and medical missionary work or benevolent work. But not only that, they had the trade skills, the necessary business skills to support themselves financially as self-supporting missionaries. Mrs. Ellen G. White had a leading part in the founding of Madison College. As a matter of fact, Madison College was the only college that Sister White was a board member of. She wrote many instructions and counsels to Megan and Sutherland as to how the school should operate. In special testimonies to the Madison School, Sister White writes the following: "The class of education given in the Madison School is such as will be accounted a treasure of great value by those who take up missionary work in foreign fields. If many more in other schools were receiving a similar training, we as a people would be a spectacle to the world, to men, and get this, to angels." That's right. The work that Madison was doing was a spectacle to angels. She goes on to say the message would be carried quickly to every country, and souls now in darkness would be brought to the light. This is one of the original buildings of Madison College. The people at Madison were hard-working and diligent people. They didn't waste their time. They put their time into practical lines of work. And we can see that here by this building, which was built by stones from the property itself by the students and faculty members.
This building was the home of Bessie DeGraw, who was one of the founders of Madison College. Madison College was founded in 1904 under the direction and inspiration of Ellen White. Ellen White served on the board of this college until about a year before she passed away. The only board that she ever served on was this one. She had a real burden for the Madison School concept and its success. And it was what they call self-supporting. The church did not support the school, it supported itself. Now this would be the living room, and we've got all kinds of little things sitting around: an old typewriter, Dr. E.A. Sutherland's desk. This is a picture here of Dr. Sutherland. He was one of the founders. He and Percy McGann accepted the challenge of Ellen White to come south and start a school for people who couldn't afford to go to school. Now, Madison College had a lot of missionaries who left this place and went out, many of them overseas. This is a bunch of memorabilia in that case there that were sent back or brought back by a lot of the folk who left Madison and went over. Over here on this wall is what they call ropes of gold. They identified through the years students who went out as missionaries. This thing hung on the wall over at the college through the years, and they continue to add cords on it for people who went overseas. Madison really was a place designed to train. Their philosophy was everybody becomes a missionary. Everybody has a vision. And many schools with the Madison plan were started throughout the South. Some survived, some didn't. There's still a dozen schools in the South following the self-supporting Madison plan. This is a replica here of the Morning Star. Percy McGann and Edward Sutherland were on this boat when it broke down out here on the river, and while it was broken down and they were making repairs, they went off the boat onto the land, and it was a farm for sale called the Ferguson Farm, about 400 acres, and for just about $12,000, with some buildings and outbuildings and some stock and some equipment. And Ellen White told Edward and Percy that she had been in vision, had seen this place, and it was the place to start the school. They sat on a rock and cried because it was so much rocky territory, some fertile land down by the river, but most of it was difficult, and so they were not encouraged at all. When I came here, I was in the 5th grade. I graduated in the academy, and then I went to college part-time for 2 years. So that's kind of my connection with Madison College. My parents worked here. My father was a farmer. He was in charge of all the fruits at Madison. There were 2 large grape vineyards, strawberry fields, peaches, apples, all kinds of fruit. And that was his responsibility, was taking care of all those things. Life at Madison in the 40s and 50s was quite simple. My parents came to Madison College without a car. When I graduated from academy, they still did not own a car because they couldn't afford one. So I would say life was simple. Now, college, everybody worked. Most everybody worked. Most people who came to Madison did not have money, so they had to work in order to pay for their tuition. Academy went to classes in the morning, worked in the afternoon. College went to classes in the morning, and then they worked in the afternoon. So everybody had a job and everybody had a place to go. There were probably at least 50 different industries. There was a large dairy farm with 70 cows, milk plant processing and made all kinds of products. They had a food factory that made all kinds of health foods, a bakery, delivery trucks that ran around the city delivering baked goods. A friend of mine came from Oklahoma, and he got here, and they said they were full up and they couldn't take him, but he said he couldn't go back to Oklahoma because he only had 75 cents left. So he finally found a job and stayed and became a nurse, and the rest is history. So there was possibilities for a lot of people to get education. People came to Madison College from all over the United States. So most of those who came to Madison College developed quite a good work ethic. I have never been lazy. I have always been willing to work, and that's the way with the majority of people that came to Madison. They learned to work because work was part of study. You know, I am not sure. It seems like during the 40s, 30s, 40s, there was a lot of publicity of Madison as being an ideal college environment where everybody worked, everybody was trained. Maybe Madison's purpose was to run 60 years and create all this energy and all these ideas and all these programs, and then allow others to continue the same work.